So sorry, I'm going to be kind of looking at your computers here. Thank you all for joining us. I'm really thrilled to be here. Look forward to meeting all of you. Sorry that we're running a little late, but it's fine. I had timed this out with lots of pauses for discussion and activities and exercises. So we can just kind of, keep tabs on the time as we go along. Here's a quick outline of what we're going to do today. I've divided up today's session into 4 blocks. And each one can probably take 15, 20, 25 minutes. The later ones will take a tad longer. And so if we do 15, 20, 25 minutes each, we'll be done within a couple hours. And still wrap this up by 1 o'clock. I do have, sorry, was that a note to me, Celine, or to others? Okay, got it. I do have a little pause in here to get to know you. I watched the videos that you all recorded and that were shared during the welcome stuff last week, I guess. I watched them last week when I got them. So I have a little bit of a sense of the teams that are in here and who's participating. But we'd really like to get to know you a little more. And I certainly have questions for all of you. So we will get to some introductions in a moment after I give a real quick overview, which I'm just going to jump into right now. John mentioned taking notes, and you're welcome to take notes, of course. I will share my slides with you. I'll send around a PDF after the class. So you don't feel like you have to write every single thing down. I'll be sharing it with you. And as I said, I do have some exercises built in. I think I have about 6 actual things that we're going to work on, sort of workshops. And so, hopefully you have a piece of paper and a pen, or you can use like a Notepad or Word or, an online Google Doc to actually do these things that we're going to be getting to shortly. I want to jump into talking about why we're here and why we're taking this class and what it's designed around. So hopefully you can all see this. This is a graph of the success rate of startup companies. As you can see from looking at this, most startup companies fail. We have, John, are you still with us? Can I be asking you questions during this?
Absolutely. I'm here.
So we have, there's 5 teams participating right now, right? Sort of actively participating that were awardees of this?
That's correct.
Yeah, so if these 5 companies that are participating in today's program fall into the normal distribution and historical data that we have around the success of startups, the chances are 3 or 4 of them are going to fail. And that's just the reality of a lot of research that's been done on the success of startup companies. And if we're lucky, one of them will be a base hit or even a home run if we can. So a question for all of you, and I would like this to be participatory, interactive discussion. Any of the 5 teams that are on the line, please, one of you unmute yourself, or you can chime in on the comments here and tell me what you think drives the failure rate. Why do so many startups fail? Anybody?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you, Patrick.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I think that I think it's just hard. It's very difficult. It's a marathon, and I think it's painted as like a very nice journey with social media, things like YouTube and Instagram, and they paint the end result without painting what the actual race itself looks like. And I think a lot of people burn out.
Burnout. Yeah, burnout, challenge, and just the challenge and the like the persistence that's needed as a founder to stick with it. Sounds like what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely. You gotta be built for it. It's very difficult.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Good answer for sure. Yep. And there's no wrong answers, right? Startups fail for many different reasons. That's a good one.
I see Angel is. I don't know why I can't bring her up, but the cohort, she just made the comment about incorrect assumptions being the things that drives the failure rate.
Yeah, Angel, are you able to chime in here? I'm curious, what kind of assumptions do you think?
There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that we make incorrect assumptions about there being a market for the product that we have, that the market will be, that there will be as much demand for the product that we have. So think.
Incorrect assumptions about the market and the need for the product. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic answer. In fact, I think that you might sneak a peek at my later slides because you definitely got it. So let me show you. There's been a lot of studies. I'm just to get a little disoriented looking at two different cameras. Let me see if I can share. It's not working. Okay, I'll try that again. Oh, it is working. Look at that, screens everywhere.
Okay.
Sorry, I just still getting set up here.
Hey, Celine, while he's doing that, let's see if we can pull in Muhammad and Nancy, possibly.
All right, is that working? Everybody still see what I'm doing?
Oh, okay.
Okay. So many studies, there have been many studies that show that have looked at the success and failure of startups and investigated why they succeed and why they fail. And the one that I'm showing you here is just one common one that a lot of people refer to. There's been many others. And they, for the most part, they find the same thing. Most startups fail because of building something that nobody wants. The number one reason. Number two, hiring poorly. Number three, lack of focus. We're just going to focus on these top three for a moment. Both of you made comments that speak to this phenomenon. Why would somebody go out and start a company and make a bet with their time and their money on building something that nobody wants? And the answer is that's not what they think that they're doing. But a lot of really really forensics have been done on companies that had backing, had financial backing, and then scrutinized all of the memos and the letters of when funders pulled their funding and when companies were dissolved. And this is what the research has found. So our goal with this program is to increase the odds. Rather than...
They're open on the other side.
Sorry, you're a little feedback.
Hold on, folks. Folks, so we're getting a little feedback. Can everyone mute their mics, please?
Thanks. All right, thank you. That's great. So my goal in this program is very explicitly to move this curve over that we shared with you. The red line is the normal distribution of success rate of startups. I want to move it over and create a new line, a green one here, where less of you have strikeouts, more of you have base hits, more of you have home runs. I'm not here to look at the 5 startups that have received funding and participating in this program and pick what's the one that I think is going to have the best chance of success. My goal is to increase the odds of success for all of you so that at the end of the day, rather than only one, if we're lucky, startup succeeding, maybe most of you can succeed. Maybe we get 3 or 4 successes. Maybe we're more likely to get a home run out of these 5 startups. So we've developed a very systematic approach to how to attack this problem to identify unmet needs. Rather than building something no one wants, identifying with a granular level of detail exactly what the needs are in the market and designing our solution towards it. And broadly, this approach is called evidence-based entrepreneurship. We also often use the term lean startup, which many of you may have heard of, as a label for the framework that's evolved to try to address these problems. Looks like I'm having some audio issues. Do I need to switch to phone? Anybody, Celine? Can you tell me?
Yeah, Dan. So what's happening is that your voice comes in and then goes out to a lower volume, and that's pretty consistent throughout what you've been saying so far. Do you have maybe headphones or?
I do. Oh no, the headphones don't work on computer audio.
Okay.
I mean, I just know from experience that it might help, but often doesn't. I'm really sorry about these hiccups.
No
So
worries.
switch over, switch audio. Not seeing an option. For switching to audio. Is that better?
Let's give it a test, Dan.
All right, testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. How's that?
Yep. Excellent. Yep. Keep rolling. You're good.
All right. Never a dull moment in I-Corp. All right. So how are we doing? We back?
Totally good.
Okay. So I-Corp is built around asking smart questions and gaining insights from the answers to those questions. The first question in designing this program that we ask is, why do startups fail? We just discussed that, because no one wants. And so we want to try to address this issue.
Having an audio issue. Sorry.
When we to
Dan, we're having an audio issue
Sorry.
again. I'm sorry about that. It's coming in and
Okay.
out. Am I the only? Can someone else confirm whether there is an audio challenge? Yeah. Yeah, everyone's saying that they're having the same issue. Thanks, Rob. We'll get it corrected.
Okay.
All
Can
right.
somebody
Yeah.
figure out how to switch over to, can you help me figure out how to switch over to phone to dial in?
Okay, Celine, please provide the. Let's see something.
Yeah, it's not a bandwidth issue. I've got screaming fast bandwidth where I am. It's a computer audio issue on this computer. Use the link in my phone browser to call in. Not sure what that means. Let's see if I pull up the calendar invitation and just click on it. So there's no way to just switch to phone audio on the same login. Not working. Well, this is exciting. I'll be logged in through 3 devices. What can go wrong?
All right. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. I just refreshed my browser and I also changed the video settings for the session. So because there's so many people on right now, that might have been a problem. If you refresh for the buffering issue for everybody, it may improve. As far as the audio, I think that you're just going to have to call in, just access the same platform on using your phone, and you can use the audio from there, but it's going to bring you up as another profile, I think.
Yeah. Can you hear me at the moment through? I know it's a bad audio.
Okay now. Yeah.
Yeah. The problem is when I talk a lot, it starts to get choppy. If I'm just talking a little bit, it seems to be okay. I've experienced this elsewhere. So I'm logging in right now through my 3rd device. I think I'm in.
You hear me?
We can see you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right.
So far,
let's
so
try
good.
this.
Yeah, we hear you good.
All right. Let's do
All right. If you need me to log in through a 4th device, I'm out of devices. I'm sorry.
No, let's hope not. I think we can go. Thanks.
All right. Okay. So
All right, here we go.
how's this?
And we hear you great.
Can't see anybody anymore. I don't know if did you all turn off your video in an effort to save bandwidth?
Yes, I think that's exactly what everyone's done. I did as well, but
Don't know that it's necessary. I love to see people, so try turning it on if you don't mind. Just helps me put names and faces together, remember you all better. And then if it doesn't work out, we can turn it back off again. So first question that led to this insight about lean startup is, going back a moment here, why do startups fail? And what can we do to avoid these problems of building something that nobody wants? Second question is, how can we better build a startup? And the founders of the lean startup movement actually looked at this and thought, we need to ask smart, insightful questions to get good answers, to really understand this problem. So if we want to know how can we better build a startup, we really do need to start with answering this question: what do we mean by startup? Let's be really specific. So anybody want to tell me, what's your definition of a startup? If we talk about increasing the odds of success of a startup, trying to help you better build a startup, what's a startup? Who here is a member of a startup? I can see a few of you on screen. Just raise your hand if you're a member of a startup. Angel, I happen to be able to see you. Okay, yeah, I did see your hand go up. All right. I can't see Patrick at the moment. Who else do we have here?
Marissa, you're here for NECA, right? You're on mute.
Sorry.
Marissa, you're on mute.
I'm sorry about that. I'm here representing Fight Blight Baltimore.
All right, Marissa, I'm going to ask you,
Okay.
just because you're in front of me right now. You raised your hand that you were a member of a startup. Why do you say that you are a member of a startup? What definition of startup are you using, just sort of intuitively, that leads you to say, yes, I am in that club?
Right. So I represent. I'm the business innovation person for Fight Blight. Again, it's a startup. It is it was a innovation, an idea that came out of what we call a painful problem, And so I'm a management consultant by trade. So I help social entrepreneurs with their startups. And so a startup is, we are identifying what the problem and the causal factors of the problems are. We're unpacking all of that. We're putting together a business infrastructure because this is an innovative endeavor. We kind of test some models out, if you will. I come from the perspective of the future organization. I will operate as open teams of teams with a symbiotic relationship, working toward a common mission and purpose. And so we are building capacity as a startup. We're building infrastructure and looking at resource management.
Okay, so a group of people working together towards a common goal. I'm just trying to pare back what I heard you say. To solve a specific problem, build capacity towards a specific thing, a specific mission. All right, very good. Anybody have a slightly different answer or the same? Anybody else want to chime in on what you think, why you think you're a member of a startup, or if you don't think you are, why you're not, and what that means? Mohammed,
you are here. Okay, can we bring him up on? Can you request the video, Mohammed? Then that way we can add you to the screen. There you are. Excellent. Well, I don't know where it went, but let's see.
all right, we'll work on this. I'm going to have
Anyways,
each
we'll
team
work on that.
introduce them.
Go ahead.
I'm going to ask each team to introduce themselves in about 3 minutes. So at that point, we can iron out the issues of audio and video and make sure we can hear from everybody.
There you go.
Patrick says
Sweet.
it's a new
Go ahead.
method to solve an old problem. Mohammed says a startup is focused on a solution and testing the solution. There's Mohammed. Great. So the folks who designed I-Corp and are responsible largely for the lean startup sort of methodology came up with this definition. A startup is a temporary organization designed to search for a scalable business model. That's the definition I'm going by for this course. And I want to draw your attention to a few key words in this definition. First, we conceive of startups as being temporary. If you are working for a small company that's in the early stages, you may have moved beyond this concept of being temporary and searching for something. So a startup is searching as an entity, an organization that's looking for something. And what we're looking for is a model. So there's a lot to unpack here, but I encourage you all to start to take a look at this. And I'll share the slides with you and start to think in these terms that we have this distinction between startups and companies. Many of the way that we used to teach entrepreneurship, the way that we used to teach startups, is we look at all of the fantastic work that's been done in business schools around the country, around the world, looking at the best practices of corporations, and we would look at how companies succeed, and we would then draw those lessons down and say, well, if this works for a company, then when we're teaching entrepreneurs, we'll do the same thing just on a smaller scale because startups are smaller. And the really interesting insight, along with better understanding of why startups fail, that led to this methodology is understanding that the way you teach startups is fundamentally different from the way you teach companies. Startups are searching for something, companies are executing on a plan. And so I want you all to think of yourselves as entrepreneurs who are searching for a business model and trying to learn these lessons from all of your predecessors of former startups on the side of the road of why they fail to not make the same mistakes they made. And so when you unpack this, you end up getting this methodology that just kind of falls in your lap when you think it through about the need to go out and understand problems through what we call customer discovery, validate those problems while you're in search mode before you transition into execution mode. customer creation, and company building, trying to come up with something scalable. Some of you, in fact, I assume all of you, in order to receive your grants and apply for this program, if not already, probably have incorporated or have some sort of legal entity, might even have a little revenue, might have an app or a product or a service. That's totally fine. I want you to put that on hold for today, for the next 2 hours, and dial it back to the far left side of this screen and think about going back and validating our assumptions and being sure that we can understand them at a granular level. So we do that by getting out of the building. Right now, we're in the building. And the facts are not in the building. I'm hoping that you'll learn some stuff from me, from the resources I share with you, from each other. You're going to learn a lot more by going out and engaging with people. And there's an asterisk on the word out, because for the last 7 years, I've pushed people to go out and actually meet face-to-face with their customers and partners and key stakeholders in their ecosystem. Now, because of the pandemic, generally not too safe to go out and meet with people face-to-face, so we'll be doing it by Zoom and doing it by phone as much as possible. You use your judgment on how best to connect with people. The goal is not to be talking, but to be listening to customers. And what we're going to ask you to do in this program is 65 interviews with key stakeholders in your ecosystem over the 13 weeks. That's 5 interviews a week for 13 weeks, starting now. That is sort of the guts of what we're doing, is going out and engaging with stakeholders and learning from these interviews and doing 5 a week. So one of the patron saints, I will say, of the I-Corp program is this guy, Richard Feynman, one of the most famous, accomplished physicists of the last 100 years. And he had this quote, which I really like: "The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool." There's been an awful lot of research around confirmation biases, and I'll be talking about that a lot more in an hour or so, and the importance of stepping back and being objective and scrutinizing our assumptions. Another patron saint of I-Corp is this guy. Anybody know who this is? And anybody know this quote? Angel's waving. Angel, do you know the quote? Anybody jump in?
Everyone has a plan.
Everybody has a plan.
Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. So another another inspiring quote that for I-Corp is: "We all have plans about what we're going to do, but when we get in that boxing ring, it doesn't always work out, right? And that's why a lot of startups fail. You think you know what you're doing, you have a plan, and then you get out there and you get punched." And we say in I-Corp, no business plan survives first contact with customers. And so my job here is not to keep you from getting punched in the face. It's to have you go out, get those punches early, get them now while you're in a safer environment, while you have support from this program, support from me, support from each other. Go out, take those punches, learn from it, gain experience, pivot, and have a more solid plan that you can fall back on. So the primary learning from this course comes from the interviews. And with that, I want to give you just a quick overview of I-Corp. Everything I told you is the foundation on. And I've been involved in I-Corp from the early days. It says here that I-Corp was founded in 2011. I joined in 2013. So very, I've been part of it. It's been my full-time job for 7 years. I did it all day. I've consolidated 7 years into one slide, just to give you the background of the program. So I-Corp stands for Innovation Corps, and it was launched by the National Science Foundation 9 years ago. At its heart, it's an entrepreneurial training program for researchers, very relevant to all of you, entrepreneurs with interesting, innovative, early-stage ideas. The goal is to orient our researchers towards solving real-world problems and increase your odds of success, impact of your success, not just the likelihood of you succeeding, but the impact of having greater efficacy with your inventions. Well, it seems like an eternity headed into this act passed. It was one of the last acts of the Obama administration, actually only about 3 years ago, that said I-Corp was so successful that it would spread not just from National Science Foundation researchers, but all agencies that fund research and development. So NIH, USDA, Department of Defense, Homeland Security, NASA, and so on. All of these agencies are now adopting I-Corp as the model that they use to teach their researchers innovation. And it's also been spreading all around the world. I've actually been involved in many of these efforts. Many of NSF's counterparts, the science foundations of other countries, the ministries of science and technology of other countries are looking at the success of I-Corp and trying to replicate it. So I've launched I-Corp programs in Mexico, Brazil, Canada, South Korea, Japan, India, probably forgetting some. But it's a methodology that's been extremely well received and is spreading. And so I'm really, really happy to be able to bring this program to those of you here in Accelerate Baltimore. Happy to answer any questions about I-Corp. Probably not most relevant that we dive into that right now, but happy to answer any questions if you have it. Last thing I'll say, can you all still see my screen okay? I'm getting a little bit of a hiccup on my screen.
We're seeing it okay.
Maybe just somebody, okay. So in this classroom, we're all entrepreneurs, and I mean that literally and figuratively. You are all entrepreneurs. I'm also an entrepreneur. I was an entrepreneur for most of my career. And whether or not we are literally entrepreneurs, the spirit of I-Corp is to be entrepreneurial and to push each other and bring that urgency to our activities. So I'll be pretty blunt and pretty direct and also hopefully respectful, but the goal is to make progress quickly. So with that, I'm going to move into introductions. I had to put this slide together for something else I was doing a few weeks ago, so I thought I'd bring it over and use it by way of introduction of myself. The photo in the bottom left here is me with my wife and kids. We've been doing what we can during the pandemic to get outside and stay healthy and keep our mental sanity as best as we can. Never easy during these trying times that we're going through. Bottom middle picture is me in Bahrain in the Middle East. Last year, the State Department brought me over to run a program. They were giving funding to technology entrepreneurs from developing countries, mostly countries in Africa, Middle East, Asia, and South America. Funded them all to come to Bahrain for an entrepreneurial program that I ran. So really, really enjoy working with people all around the world to help them improve their business models. Bottom right's just a silly photo, early days of the pandemic, loading up on toilet paper. Glad to say that we didn't run out. Yeah, on a more serious note, I was an entrepreneur for about 20 years. I think my bio was shared with you. Happy to connect on LinkedIn with any of you. If you want to connect with me, you can see what I've done in the past and also use that to leverage it for introductions to anybody else in my network. And about 7 years ago, decided I was done being an entrepreneur. I wanted to help others and teach entrepreneurship. So I joined George Washington University, working on I-Corp. They're part of the same I-Corp node that University of Maryland is. Then last year, I moved from GW over to University of Maryland to be executive director of the I-Corp node, which is a group of universities funded by National Science Foundation to run I-Corp programs. So that includes, as well as GW and UMD, also Johns Hopkins and Virginia Tech, covering the whole Mid-Atlantic area. So that's me in a snapshot. And I would now like to hear from all of you. Just briefly, I really apologize for all the technical hiccups. We are running a little behind here. So I'd like to keep it really short, but I'd love for each one of you to just quickly unmute and just spend 60 seconds answering these questions real fast. I did, as I mentioned, watch your videos, but if you could each just chime in one at a time quickly. Just tell me who you are, your company name, in one sentence, your main product or service, and who your customers are. Lost sound. Is that just Marissa, or is it everybody?
So why don't you go able to start from the left, the screen to the right? Why don't you go first?
All right, hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Patrick, and my company's name is Super. We are a on-demand bus driver service that focuses on reducing transit quality for passengers and customers. And our actual customer is the government transit agencies. I think that was under 60 seconds.
Government transit agencies? Okay, I'm going to challenge you on this one a little bit. So, what kind of government?
State transit, state government transit, yeah.
State government, okay. So going forward, let's be more specific. State government transit agencies. Who, so let's use Maryland. Who in the Maryland Transit Agency is the most important person for you to be talking to?
The administrator. He's the CEO.
What's his job title?
The CEO.
I'm sorry, the what?
Administrator.
Wonderful. Okay, great. And what, again, what's your company name? Got it. That's right. I saw that in your video. Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for going. John, do you want to call in the next person?
Sure. Angel's up next.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Angel St. Jean. I am CEO of the Black Brain Trust, and my co-founder, Rob Drayton, is here with me today. Our product is the Equity and Action Score. It's like a credit score for companies to really see how they're centering equity in their business practices. And I'm going to go back on your definition of a startup and sort of, I'd say that we're in that customer discovery mode. Coming into this, I think we had one idea of our model, and now we're really rethinking that. And so I'm not sure just yet who our customer is.
I love that answer. Rather than making something up, just saying you don't know. That's being honest. We're going to work with you in the next hour to develop hypotheses around who that might be, and then we'll go out and test that and see what you learn. So great, thank you. Who wants to jump in next?
Hello. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. So,
yes.
Yeah. So my name is Mohammed. I run Full Blast STEAM. STEAM standing for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math. We are EdTech Product and Service Development Corporation, research and development operation, developing EdTech products to engage young people and families and impart 21st century skills. Our customers are family entertainment centers, organizations that engage youth and families, like 501c3s, for instance, and parents, and family members, so young people.
Okay. All right. I got lots of questions for you, but in the interest of time, I'm going to move on, and I'll save those for about 10 minutes from now when we get to the next exercise. Thank you for going. So I've heard from 3 out of 5. Who's left?
Looks like Marissa lost
Marissa?
sound, so she's having trouble.
Okay. Who's the other one? We can wait on Marissa. That's fine.
Amari, you're on mute.
So is it Amari?
Yeah, Amari's there. He doesn't have sound either.
Okay, I'm going to move on. We will have a chance to hear from them. I'm going to be pausing for a lot of exercises, so we'll have a chance to hear from them coming up in a moment. So I mentioned I had a couple fun facts about myself on the last slide. I've lived in different places around the world. I like to rock climb, and I was hoping to get a fun fact from each of you. Why don't we have each of you put a fun fact about yourself into the chat? Just in the interest of time, just something to help me remember you, put facts and faces and names and together. Always a good way to get started. So I will be taking a look at the chat here. Type in something that the other folks in this cohort don't know about you yet. Anything that comes to mind is fine. No stress on this one. All right, so I'm going to go in and start. Patrick, the best bus driver in the state, and I have the trophies to prove it. I love that. All right, I can now say I know the best bus driver in the state of Maryland. Something I couldn't have said 10 minutes ago. Mari can't locate the unmute. Maybe somebody can help him with that through the chat. All right, I'm going to go and start talking about business models and how we can think about customers a little bit. Everybody still following me okay? All right. All right, so a business model defines how a company creates and delivers and captures value. And our goal in this program is get
I'm
you
sorry,
all
you
thinking.
guys. I somehow lost sound in the middle of introduction.
No worries. Is this Marissa?
So, Selena, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, well, I'm just going to go. Sorry about that. I just logged
Yeah,
in.
please jump in.
Logged out. But
no worries.
Again, my name is Marissa Stone. I am the Director of Innovation for the Living Well Center and Iona Concepts. And I am also the Business Innovation Developer for Fight Blight Baltimore. Many of you, I'm sure, have already met Nika Namdi, who's doing tremendous work around looking at environmental racial justice policies and practices around blight and impact of blight in community. And so she actually started as, experiencing basically, what could have been a tragic situation. And, as my work, I'm a management consultant by trade. I do a lot of work around with social entrepreneurs and turning their ideas into action and developing brand identity, et cetera. And so I've been on the Fight Blight team since its inception. And so I'm excited to share space. We will be, kind of sharing. Nika is a systems engineer by trade and to attend this session. So I'm attending in her stead. And so I'm going to try to figure out how I can get my sound back. And if anybody has any questions or comments for my introduction, if you could just type them, I can see it in the chat. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Marissa. That's great. I took a couple notes and I'll ask some follow-up questions as we get farther into this. So somebody let me know in the chat if you can still see my screen and hear me okay. I'm going to keep on going. We're going to start working on understanding business models. And I am going to go through this kind of quickly in the interest of time, but I just want to present this concept that rather than starting with a static plan, which does not survive first contact with customers, we are going to focus on a dynamic business model and the fundamental building blocks that you can gather from doing customer discovery to build that business model. So I'm not going to go into all of this right now, but I'll share the slides with you and share resources where you can read up on it more on your own. But the right half of this business model canvas, as we call it, focuses on the customer side of your business model. And then the left side focuses on the operations in your company and your organization. So we use this, what we call a canvas, as a roadmap or a laboratory notebook or a discovery map to organize our hypotheses and what we're learning from our interviews and dynamically build a business model. And we always start with asking, who are our customers and what is that value proposition to those customers? What is the reason that they have to buy or adopt what it is that you are developing or proposing? So we start with understanding customers and value propositions. We're going to unpack these in a lot more detail. Standing between those two are customer relationships and channels. How do your customers learn about new solutions? How are they accessible to you? Where do they buy things currently? Where do they look for new solutions to the problems that they have? We're not going to get into this any further than what I just shared with you, but it's a really important next step once you've identified your customers and your value proposition. How do your customers pay for things? What's your pricing model? What's your revenue model? Is a fundamental part of your business model. And then as a startup, you generally can't do everything by yourself. So with whom are you going to partner? What resources do you need? What activities will you be focusing your time on? What are your core competencies in delivering the solution? This left side is all the company operation side of your business model. And all of that is informed by the bottom left in your cost structure. Obviously, the goal is to look at the bottom right and the revenue opportunity of your business model, look at the bottom left and the costs that are associated with delivering this business model, and having the right side greater than the left side, and determining that this can be a profitable venture, or at least a sustainable venture. So I really want to spend the time talking about customers and unpacking customers specifically. So there's lots of different kinds of customers, and we touched on a little bit. I challenged Patrick on who exactly would be the decision maker in his ecosystem. But all of you might have some of these kinds of roles in your customer segment. You might have somebody who's a beneficiary of what you're proposing, but doesn't actually spend any money, but they benefit from it. You might have an end user who's the one who actually uses your product or your service. And often that person is different from the decision maker. The person who uses it might be different from the person who decides to buy it. You might have a different person, yet a different person who pays for it. There might be other people who influence the decision, who are not technically the decision maker, but have a strong influence on getting it adopted. And I'd like you all to start thinking about who these people might be in your business model. So we're going to start with focusing on the user who uses your solution, who's your end user, and who's your decision maker as a good starting point. So the end user here might be, I think we have an ed tech solution out of the 5, so it might be a teacher who's using it, or it might be a parent. I work with a lot of teams that sell into the medical space, so it might be a healthcare professional. It could be a software developer or a business executive as well as an end user. Decision makers might be some sort of business executive, CEO, COO of an organization. It might be a committee or a panel of people who have to make a decision. And we want to figure that out very specifically so that we can understand their needs and their challenges. So think about what are good ways to describe your customers. Are they businesses? Are they consumers? Are you selling into a business environment or into a consumer environment? What kind of role do these people have, the people who you think your customers are? Are they able to make decisions? They need to get permission and sign off from other people. What kind of companies do they work for? What are their job titles? These are all questions that we're going to be working through right now. So keeping in mind that we're not talking about our product. If you are making a drill bit, we're not talking about the drill bit. We're talking about the problem that people have. People don't want a 1/4 inch drill, they want a 1/4 inch hole. So I'm going to focus on who these people are who have these needs. I'm going to pause now on the first exercise, the first stop, and ask you very simply and quickly, who do you think is the most important stakeholder in your ecosystem? I heard Patrick say the CEO of a state government transit agency, which is a great first answer. Didn't get very specific answers from the rest of you. I'd like you to either unmute and tell me that answer, or put it into the chat. And you can take a moment to think about it. So if you why don't we go with Angel, who I know has some questions about who she thinks her customers are. And just tell me, what's a good educated guess? I know you got accepted into this program and you got funding because you had some good ideas. You obviously have been putting some thought into this. Can you just throw out an educated guess about who you think that might be? And it's of course fine to be wrong.
I'd say companies and probably the head decision maker, whether it's the CEO or executive director of a nonprofit, and in this initial phase, Black people.
Okay. So we start by looking at, do we sell to individuals, consumers, or do we sell to businesses? And you're clearly selling to businesses. This is a score that, for an equity score that businesses are going to get. So you're selling into it's a B2B environment, and you are selling to, you think, probably a head of a company. Can you be a little more specific about what kind of company you think would care about this? Big companies, small companies?
I think definitely employer companies, so people, businesses that have staff. I think of all sizes, both for-profit and nonprofit.
And you had said nonprofit originally, which is great, and that's a really good focus. So if we stick with that, just for now, it seems like they have to have a number of employees for this to be meaningful. How many employees do they need to have, like minimum?
I mean, I guess I would think 5. I think enough. Yeah.
Okay.
5.
Okay, so this is great. And if I told you that I knew somebody who worked for a nonprofit, or I was aware of a nonprofit that, let's say, had 10 employees, and you could talk to any one person in that nonprofit, would it be the CEO of the nonprofit, or do you think there might be somebody else in the nonprofit who's more important for caring about this equity score?
I mean, I think the CEO will care a great deal about the score, but I also think that there are other people that could influence the CEO. At the end of the day, the CEO has to make a decision. And so I think there are others who could influence the CEO. I see Rob added HR director, so I'd agree with that. But probably somebody in leadership position that has access to the CEO.
Okay, so this is more than you were telling me 10 minutes ago. So it's great progress. So why don't we go with HR directors and CEOs of nonprofits that have more than 5 employees as your starting hypothesis. You might be wrong. It's totally fine to be wrong. But to make progress, you're going to start with that. Go out and see if that seems like the right fit. And if not, you'll iterate and adjust on the strategy. Does that sound good? Awesome. So I think I've got some ideas from Patrick and from Angel. Amari says that their end users are seniors and disabled persons. Amari, are you able to unmute and talk? I wasn't able to hear your voice earlier. Seems like maybe not. Keep trying. Love to be able to engage with you and have a conversation about this. And until then, can't seem to unmute. Bummer. Okay, yeah, until then, we'll just keep working on chat, which is totally fine. Marissa, resident communities, public health institutions, and real estate markets. Yes. Marissa, are you able to unmute? So that's a lot. Can you be a little more specific? Who is your end user? Remind me.
Fight Blight Baltimore.
You have,
yes,
this
Fight
is an
Blight.
app,
Well, it's more,
right?
it's more than an app. An app is just the tool,
yeah.
But the end goal is it's an environmental social justice initiative. And so in the communities, are the beneficiaries and the end users, specifically as it relates to the tool and the app. Public health institutions that are looking at, social determinants around environmental justice issues, as well as the real estate market. Blight impacts the economic outcomes of community, and also it impacts the legacy, the generational wealth, especially in Black communities, specifically in Baltimore.
Okay. Give me 2 examples of, you say the kind of person who would be an end user. Just give me 1 example of who this person is. Just something that helps describe them so that you can identify them and talk to more of them. If I know a ton of people. I have 1,000 connections on LinkedIn. Which one of them would be good? What labels or filters would you put on them to understand if they would be an end user?
A person who is living in a community properties, a person that is interested in knowing kind of what environmental health issues that may present themselves. If you are knocking down a building that was built in the 1800s, that action is going to increase the environmental health issues in that community. So somebody that is living in the community would be an end user. The city would be an end user.
Okay, let's be more specific here. You say you started with somebody who lives in a neighborhood with blight. Is this a property owner or just
anybody who lives there? They don't need to be a property owner. Anybody.
Okay, certain age?
Anybody that lives in community.
Okay. Do they have to be a certain age? Are you targeting adults or
kids,
could it be kids?
Anyone who lives in the neighborhood.
Okay. Do they have to have mobile phones to engage with you through the app or a website?
Yes, they would have to have some type of mobile device to engage using.
Okay. All right. Great. So good starting point. And then where's the revenue come from?
Fight Blight has been very successful in competing in social innovation initiatives such as the I-Corp or the ETC program. We've done a successful fundraising campaign, and also we do consulting for other municipalities and social health institutions.
So yeah, but just to be clear, this is sort of a point for everybody on the line. You've all gotten money to be in this program, which is fantastic. And you might win other awards and do other fundraising. But what I'm asking about is not dilutive or non-dilutive funds that you raise to support these early stages, but sustainable revenue, like people who actually pay for this
so
service.
As consultants,
specifically
so
for
as
this.
consultants, we are able to sustain our capacity through shared leadership, if you will. As well as we do consulting, and so those consulting dollars help. There are revenue, one of our revenue generating lines of business.
Okay, so you're building a consulting.
Well, we already
business.
had a consulting business.
Okay. All right, and who pays for the consulting?
Customers such as universities, state health institutions, private entities pay us for our consulting around what we've learned and understand about blight and our thought leadership around.
Okay. All right. Great. Let's keep working on honing in on a specific definition of who that decision maker is for the consulting. And it sounds like you do know that. Just in the interest of time, move on to the next team. Amari, I think I can see you.
I'm here, but I don't.
Oh my God, I can hear you too. Love it. Tell me who your customers are.
Our customers could range from hospitals, clinics, physicians, counselors, psychiatrists, and then we have end users that will be able to use the service free or to use the service by their Medicare or Medicaid. So in our vertical expansion, we anticipate having the city government as a client, school districts as a client, but initially we're focused on getting hospitals, clinics, physicians, counselors, Veterans Administration as clients to provide services to our end users who are seniors, persons with disability, veterans.
Great. Great. Okay. And I didn't really get a full introduction from you earlier. Can you remind me what it is, what your idea or
Certainly.
product or service is?
I'm working with DIPS Technology. We are doing business in Baltimore as the Sankofa Community Network. Our business model has evolved. I see Nancy has just come in the room. Our business model has evolved. Initially, we were looking to address the Wi-Fi issue in Baltimore and provide services to end users who would be on our virtual private network. But as this thing shapes up, it looks like the urgency for us is to stand up the telehealth portal in public housing and senior housing.
Okay, telehealth portal and public
Yes.
housing and senior housing.
We've identified those
Great.
those geographical locations as places where 17% of the population in senior housing and low income housing can't afford to pay for internet access. So our objective was to get in there, get them online so they can have access to telehealth, telemedicine services.
Great. Thank you. I'd like to ask each one of you to take a piece of paper and jot down who you think the single most important person is in your customer ecosystem. So it might be a bus driver, it might be, CEO of a state government transit agency, it could be a real estate professional, CEO of a nonprofit. Got a lot of different things jotted down here. Mohammed, I'm sorry I didn't get to you yet, but it sounds like it might be parents or teachers perhaps. And Amari, somebody in public or senior housing. Jot down who you think that most important person is, a decision maker and or end user. And I want you to start thinking about what do they do now, specifically around the problem you're trying to solve, but also very importantly, in general. What do they care about most? And I'm using the term jobs loosely, because it might be, like in Marissa's case, it might be a resident of a neighborhood and their jobs aren't literally employment jobs, things they get paid for in their capacity as a resident, but the things that they do in that capacity, their main tasks, their main activities. What are their main responsibilities in that capacity? What problems do they have? And what gains could you possibly bring them if you brought them an innovative solution? If you were to go and ask these people, what do you do and what problems do you have? I want you to jot down what you think the answers to those questions would be. If I were to go to the CEO of Maryland's transit agency and say, can you just tell me what your 3 primary responsibilities are and what keeps you up at night? What are you most worried about? What would that person say? So I want you all to take a minute to jot down answers to those questions. And feel free to just unmute and ask me a question or chime in on chat if you have questions about this. I'm not going to call on each one of you in the interest of time, because we're only about halfway through. I need to make up some time here. But maybe you can just put a little one line, just a one word in the chat when you feel like you've either, as Mohammed did, you can type in your answer, or you can just type in one word saying that you're ready to move on. But like to know that each one of you has at least something down on paper where you have a sense of who this person is and what their jobs are and what their pains are. Let's not worry about gains right now. What do you think their primary responsibilities are and what problems do they have? What we want to do is think about the solutions that we're bringing in the context of other problems that they have. Is this something that's top of mind? Is it something that they're trying to solve? How urgently are they trying to solve it? How are they trying to solve it? Let's see if I can go back on camera here without messing anything up. There we go. You all see me now? All right, Nancy, I like your answer. If you could be more specific about elderly, what other filters can you put on that? What does elderly mean? Can you quantify that? Can you come up with a specific age that determines elderly? Are these people who, by definition, live in urban areas? Just because of what your team said earlier, I'm guessing that might be the case. And yeah, what are they doing? You know, what are they doing to get by? What are their problems? All right, so I think I see answers from Mohammed, Marissa, Nancy. And Nancy, what team are you on? Who are you with? Yes, I can.
Yes, we can hear you.
Got it. Great. Perfect. Thank you. Great. I thought so. I just want to make sure I get everybody on my notepad here in the right spot. Yeah. All right. So I've heard from Amari's team. It looks like I've heard from Mohammed. Marissa has something in here as well. Angel. CEO. All right. And Patrick. Patrick, you with us? Yes. All right, great. I am going to move on now. I want to encourage you to keep working, all of you keep working on this. Try to add more specificity to who that customer is, add more detail to what if you were to ask them, what jobs are they doing? What are their responsibilities? What's keeping them up at night? Keep adding to that list of what you think is most important. I'm not looking for a list of 20 things. I'm looking for the top several things and seeing if you're accurate about your assumptions. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about specifically these answers that you came up with are hypotheses. These are guesses. All of you have connections to these people. You've put some thought into it. You know some of them. In some cases, you're coming from an environment where you've worked in that space. So you have very informed, educated guesses. And nonetheless, they are still assumptions. They're still hypotheses to some extent. So I mentioned Richard Feynman earlier, famous physicist, who said the first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you're the easiest person to fool. We are jumping into the unknown here and trying to map out, if we just sort of start with a clean slate and think about understanding that many startups fail because of building something that nobody wants, and understanding that we have some assumptions that need to be tested, we're going to go out there as if we don't know. We don't know what the CEO cares about. We don't know what the transit CEO cares about, or the the senior housing official or whoever it is. So how do we explore something where we don't even know what the starting point is? So I've got a quote here that I like to use to share it, which is, if we're trying to jump into the unknown and map it out, we're looking for a new law. And we do that by following this. We make a guess, which all of you just did. We think about what those consequences would be, compute the consequences, and compare them to the results in nature. We compare it directly to our observation by going out and doing interviews. And if it disagrees with experiment, then our guess is wrong. And that simple statement is the key to science. So it doesn't matter how beautiful your guess is. Doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter who made the guess. If the guess disagrees with the experiment, then it's wrong. And that's all there is to it. So that's another Richard Feynman quote. And to me, this is one of the best short, simple explanations of the scientific method in layperson's terms that I've seen, which is why I like to use it. What we're trying to do as best as we can is bring the scientific method to startup businesses. And my appointment at University of Maryland is in the College of Engineering at UMD. And I work largely with innovators and researchers who are commercializing their inventions, creating startups around new technologies. And so it's a process that resonates with a lot of I-Corp participants, thinking about stating our hypothesis, going out and testing it, and being very objective about what we hear. So I mentioned earlier on the left side, this concept of a canvas, and on the right side, the concept of going out and searching for a model. You could do either one of these alone. On the right side, you could go and just talk to people, ignore the business model canvas, ignore this framework, just go talk to people. You'll learn a lot from just talking to them. You could also just stay on the left side, map out who your customers are, what they do, what their pains are. Don't talk to any of them, but just do this classroom exercise and you will make progress. The great power of this methodology is when you do these combined. When you state a hypothesis on the left, you go and you test it on the right, and you come back and you iterate, and you do it over and over and over again. And that's what I-Corp is. So customer discovery, to be very clear, is not promoting yourself. It's not going out and self-promoting and talking about your great ideas. It's not sharing your service, sharing your product, sharing your idea. It's testing a hypothesis. So we're developing business hypotheses, which are testable beliefs about value creation. We're going to develop a hypothesis, which is our guess. We're going to go do interviews, which is testing it. We're going to listen to the answers. We're going to come back and adjust, think about it, and pivot and do it again. We're starting right here at the very first step. I am going to, I guess I'll mention this quickly. I'm not going to get into much details. I have a case study that I've put together. And I think in the interest of time, I'm not going to go into the whole thing. I'm just going to share it at a high level and then share the slides with you, just because we're running a little tight on time here. But I've worked with a lot of teams in this space. I mean, I've worked with teams in many spaces, material science, and computer science, and medical devices, and therapeutic drugs, and just on and on. Robotics, AI, many different kinds of teams that I've worked with, and a lot in the nonprofit sector and social entrepreneurship as well. I worked with quite a few teams that have come up with robotics devices or AI or new sensors, where they've figured out better ways to inspect pipelines. Just one idea I'm throwing out there. The specifics don't matter. It doesn't matter what the underlying technology is. But they'll come into a program like I-Corp and they say, hey, I have something smaller than what's on the market. It's more maneuverable. It detects leaks better, whatever it is. And we go out there and I say, well, that's great, but who's your customer? And they'll say, well, I'm going to sell into the water industry. Like I went to India and launched a program there. I had a couple teams in this space where water quality, water purity is a real big problem. So they might be selling to water. They might be selling it to oil and gas. They might be selling it to petrochemical, facilities, factories, whatever it is. And they might say, I think that my customer is a pipeline inspector. So again, I'm just going to go through this kind of quickly, just to show you the methodology, not to unpack the details. But I would say to them, well, that pipeline inspector, what do they do now? What are their top priorities? What jobs are they doing? What are their responsibilities? And what problems do they have? And they'll go out and talk to people. In the I-Corp programs I teach, every team has to do 100 interviews. And I've been doing this for 7 years. So I've been seeing thousands of interviews that I've read the notes of. And I'll say, go and interview them. Go interview a whole bunch of pipeline inspectors and come back and tell me, what do they do and what problems do they have? And they may well come back with something like this. Well, their responsibilities are for just looking at the box on the right, which is their jobs. They're responsible for leak detection, structural damage. They control a budget. They look for new ways of doing things. They explore new methods for inspecting pipes. What problems do they have? Well, they have regulatory pressures. They're worried about safety of their employees, safety of the job site. They're worried about false positives from the tests that they're currently doing. These are the kinds of things that I've seen from literally reading hundreds of interviews with this archetype. And so my question is, okay, this is a good start. And again, the specifics don't matter. I want you to be thinking about your archetype, your person who you think is your most important customer. How can we be more specific? Can we put numbers on these things? So can we put numbers on leak detection, looking at the right? Can we put numbers on the budget, looking at the bottom left, the pains? Can we put numbers on regulations? They say they're worried about regulations. Can you quantify that? How can you quantify it? They're worried about safety. Can you quantify that? And the answer is yes, of course we can. We can always be more specific. So leak detection on the right side, well, how many leaks? They detect a certain number of leaks in a day or a month or a year. How many? And what difference can we make in that number to be worthwhile? The budget over on the right side, you say their control budget, how big is their budget? And we can put a dollar sign on that. Over on the left, they're worried about regulations. Well, what does that mean? They're worried about violations or fines, key risk indicators. You can put numbers on all of these things. They're worried about safety. How many accidents? How do they quantify safety? How do they say at the end of the year that they had a good record for safety? And so this is the level of detail that I'm asking you to get into when you try to quantify the problems, or if not quantify, specify the problems and the jobs that your customers have. We want to really understand in granular level of detail what they do and how they think about their problems. All right. So your hypothesis should be, and again, I'll share this with you. There's two kinds of them, and I'll share them with you quickly. The first is their jobs. We talked about what are their jobs, what are their responsibilities. So we're going to develop an ecosystem hypothesis, which is, are you right about this? Are these people doing the jobs that you think that they're doing? And where do they sit in the ecosystem? Do they actually make decisions? Do they actually use these products? That's what I would call an ecosystem hypothesis. And a customer hypothesis would be, once you understand that who that customer is and their role in the ecosystem, what are their problems? What are their priorities? What keeps them up at night? What are they really worried about? What motivates them? And these are hypotheses that we have around their problems, around their pains and gains. Feel free to stop me and ask questions, because I know I'm going a little fast. And again, I'll share all of this with you. We can be working through it over the next 13 weeks. I've got you for a couple hours, so I'm giving you as much as I can in that time. I'm going to start by talking about the ecosystem hypothesis, which is really simply, what jobs do these people do? All right. So the jobs are on the right side here. We think that the oil and gas pipeline inspector does these jobs. We think I'm saying he because it's a guy in this picture here, it's a stock photo. We think that his jobs are detecting leaks, detecting structural damage, controlling a budget, exploring new ways, exploring new technologies. We think those are his jobs. So the ecosystem is just very straightforward. This person does this thing. A customer performs an action. I'd like each of you to think about what yours would be. Mine is a pipeline inspector evaluates new inspection technologies and methods. Simple as that. Any questions about that? This person does this thing. The person is the noun at the top. We got a verb. He evaluates something. What he evaluates is new inspection technologies. We think that this person is the one who's going to look for a new robotics device, look for a new solution to better detect leaks. And I want to be as specific as I can, so I'm going to add some refinements to this and some specificity. I'm going to say not all pipeline inspectors, but specifically pipeline inspectors at major oil and gas companies in the United States. And rather than just saying evaluate, I'm going to speculate that he can make purchasing decisions of up to $500,000. And I could get even more specific, but this is where I'm going to stop on this one. So I'm going to ask all of you, this is the third thing I'm going to ask you to stop and do, to jot this down. The bottom left of this slide, you see the framework for an ecosystem hypothesis. Your customer does something that makes them relevant to your business model. What is it that this person does? What are you speculating that this person's job is? And I'm using the term job loosely, reflecting what they do, how they make decisions. That's meaningful to your business model. Patrick, you have a question?
Yeah. Okay, my mic's.
Yeah, you can type it in or just unmute yourself.
Am I muted? Can you guys hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay. Everybody can hear me. Oh, okay, wonderful.
I can hear you.
So when we come up with this was in reference to about 2 slides ago. Is the goal with this to try to keep it as simple and short as possible? In reference to a slide about 2 slides ago, when we were, identifying the customer. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Do you want me to go back a couple slides, or which one?
No,
what's
it
your
wasn't.
question?
Well, you answered it as you went to the next 2. But when I saw it, like this one right here, pipeline inspectors, it was like, okay, it's really short and straight to the point. And now, as you kind of elaborated on it, it made more sense. Yeah, so you kind of answered it.
Right. Even these simple ones, even this one right here, short and simple, people often get it wrong, and you want to be sure that you have it right, that you understand what their responsibilities are, which is why we start simple. So is everybody able to jot down an ecosystem hypothesis? Why don't you drop a note in the chat when you're done, when you have an ecosystem hypothesis written, or at least have the beginning of one. You have a sense of what direction this is going. What jobs do they do? What's their responsibility with regards to making decisions? That would indicate that they are the right person for you to be talking to in your business model. You don't have to be completely done on this, but just have a little progress, a little momentum, the beginning of an idea. Angel's got something. Angel, well, I'm waiting for everybody else. Can you read me yours?
Sure. Sure. I put the CEO and that they lead the company to be towards success, and that the specific actions is they establish a vision and direction, they track progress, and they manage the company's reputation.
Okay. All right, that's good. You're probably right about that the CEO of a 5+ person nonprofit manages the company's reputation and is in charge of the strategic direction. You're probably right about that, but it's good to confirm. There might be other people who care more about that. It might be that the CEO just cares about fundraising or just cares about something else. We don't know until you ask them. And there's probably many different kinds of nonprofits based on where they are, what their mission is, what space they're in, how many employees they have, where you might start to get different answers. And you want to hone in on which ones are the best ones for you. So good starting point. I would encourage you to also add maybe another one that's more specifically, well, I mean, you mentioned managing reputations, but also more specifically around adopting new solutions. Is this the person who would sign up for a new service in this space? Something along those lines. I'm not articulating it great, but you can continue to think that through.
Yeah, when I talk about direction, that's what I was thinking about. They sort of set a direction for how the company would be successful. And so those kinds of solutions I think would matter. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. I'm waiting for 4 more in the chat to just say done, or at least like tell me to move on. I'm going to move on anyway. Patrick, thank you. Patrick, I'd love to hear yours in a moment. I'll get to that on the next one. Nancy and Amari are good. Still waiting for Marissa and Mohammed. Yeah, let me know if you need more time or if it's okay if I move on. Marissa's good. Mohammed, how are you doing? All right, I might have lost him because I'm not getting anything. So
Yeah.
I'm going to keep going. Hopefully,
He's not
hopefully
there.
he's with us.
Yeah, we'll try to bring him back.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Not clear, we're rolling with it. Okay, Mohammed, also happy to spend time with any of you offline after the class, not immediately afterwards, but separately, if you want. So I want to move on and talk about customer hypotheses, which are harder, and it takes a while to formulate these hypotheses. So I'm going to jump ahead in the interest of time and not spend a lot of time. I'm going to skip a bunch of slides here and share them with you. But I do want to introduce the concept, which is that it is really important to think about what your customer might be sacrificing or what trade-off they'll be creating in going with a new solution and trying to solve a problem in a new way because of what you're bringing to the market. So in this case, I like using this example of the pipeline inspector because it's a space that people don't know a lot about, and it's easier to think about the concepts if you don't have close familiarity with it. So I'm glad that probably most people here don't know anything about pipeline inspection or oil and gas. Maybe you do, which is fine. I didn't know anything about it until a few years ago, but I happen to have learned a lot about it just from the nature of my work recently. But if you just think conceptually, and this could pertain to any one of you, you have people in your customer ecosystem who you're trying to help. And they do certain jobs, which are in the orange on the right. They have certain problems, which are in the red on the bottom left. And there's certain things in the green where their lives could be much better if some gain was brought to them. And all of these are interdependent. So if you do more of one thing, you might do worse on the other. If you imagine that this person has a job inspecting pipelines, they probably have people who are doing work for them. They have people on a team who are out there doing something, actually physically looking at a pipeline. And they care about safety, and they care about violations, and they care about fines. And conceptually, this person could spend more money and hire more people and probably get better results, detect more leaks, pay less in fines, get less violations, have less accidents by spending more money. But he's fallen into a balance because of the constraints of what he's been given. He's been given a certain budget, a certain number of people, and he's fallen into a balance where he's just decided, whether actively or passively, I'm going to spend this much money and allocate this much of my time to get this much result. I could save money and hire less people, and my results will go down. I could hire more people, spend more money, and I'll probably get better results. I'm doing the best I can with what I have. And all of you are selling into spaces where people have similar challenges and similar dynamics. All right, feel free to jump in and unmute if this isn't making sense or if you have questions about it. What I'm trying to get at is the people who you're trying to help, all of them probably have some good capabilities. They're probably pretty smart. They're trying to do the best with what they have. And you want to understand the balance that they're in right now. What is that equilibrium? They have a certain amount of money, a certain amount of time, certain priorities, and they've settled on a certain balance. And you're proposing to come in and change that balance in some way. So I'm asking you in this customer hypothesis to think about how do they prioritize one thing over another thing in a way that's meaningful for your business model. In my case, what I'm speculating is that these pipeline inspectors will prioritize leak improvement over cost savings, that they're willing to go ahead and spend a little bit more money to get much better leak improvement because I've got a much better device for them, much better than what's on the market. And I think they'll spend a little bit of money on me to do much better because it's going to make their lives so much better. 10% improvement in leak improvement detection is actually huge. I'm going to skip this right now. Sorry, I'll just touch on it quickly. But we're looking for very succinct and specific and clear hypotheses where they're not obvious and you can go out and test them. And they're not so obvious that the inverse wouldn't be true, right? You want to have a hypothesis that's meaningful for your business model and has nothing to do with your service, nothing to do with your idea, nothing to do with your product. You're going out and developing a hypothesis around a problem in the market. You're not asking them if they're interested in a solution. You're not asking them to speculate on how their lives might be better. You want to go out there and figure out the nature of the problem itself. This is what I'm going to skip over right now. It's a little game that I like to play with testing some hypotheses, but in the interest of time, I'll share these with you later. Patrick, getting them to understand the problem rather than pitching the solution. No, very good question, and very close to what I'm trying to get at. We're not trying to get them to understand the problem. I'm trying to get you to understand their problem. So your goal is not to sell them anything or make them realize that they have a problem. It's to start by understanding what is the balance that they have right now. In your case, if you're talking to a transit agency CEO, what is that person's primary responsibilities? What are their biggest problems that they're trying to solve now, if you ask them about that? And what trade-offs are they making right now? If you look at their responsibilities, their budget and their staff, the resources they have available to them, how are they allocating them right now to solve problems? And what are their top priorities? So that's what I'm trying to convey. So I'm going to skip this one for now in the interest of time and leave it with you, but I would like you to all take a look at this slide when I share it with you and end up writing down for that person, that decision maker, or that end user who you think is the most important one, how are they prioritizing, how are they coming up with a balance right now to allocate resources to solving a problem? How are they solving the problem today that you're trying to solve? And what trade-offs do you think that they might be willing to make? Angel, is it necessary that the customer understands the problem you're trying to solve on their own? Interesting question. How customers articulate the problems is going to be important for your business model. So Angel, why don't you unmute and tell me, let's say you're talking about the CEO of a 10-person nonprofit. If you ask them what are the biggest problems they have, and you spend an hour listening to them, and they never say anything about the problem that you want to hear, that you're trying to solve, that doesn't mean that they don't have a problem, but it means that it's not top of mind, and it's a discouraging signal for your business. When you tell them about what you're trying to solve, they may well say, oh, that sounds interesting. Yeah, that sounds, I'd like to do better on that. But if they're not reporting it as a problem unsolicited that they have when you really spend a lot of time with them, that indicates that they're not out there looking for solutions and that it's going to be a difficult sell. Doesn't mean you can't convince them, but convincing somebody that they have a problem is a much more expensive, time-consuming, challenging, riskier business model than one where people already have a problem that they're looking for solutions for. Does that answer your question?
In general, it's something that I would love to have a deeper conversation. But if I can example, if you take that customer CEO of a 10-person nonprofit, and they are not getting the best results for the people they're serving in their program, they may not understand that a lack of understanding about the population that they're serving is contributing to poor program design, which impacts their results. They might, I think, in the way you described the scenario, they might articulate, we'd like to help more people or have better results in our program, and may not understand sort of root cause issues, but they would at some point desire to serve more people better, which could be still an indication of the same problem.
So if that high level problem, if the way they articulate it isn't exactly what you were thinking, but it does indicate that they care about this issue broadly, if that's a strong enough signal that they're looking for solutions to that problem, or that they're very open to solutions to that problem, that's a good sign for your business model. If it turns out that they're really not thinking about it at all, and they have a lot of other pressing needs that are different and greater, it doesn't mean that you won't succeed. It means that it's going to be more expensive. It means that you need to raise awareness about you and your solution. And raising awareness is very expensive. You might be able to go out and talk to 10 or 20 or 50 people, and just by talking to them, convince them that they have a problem, and even maybe get them to buy something from you. But doing that in a repeatable, sustainable way and scaling that to a broader opportunity, that gets expensive. It doesn't mean it can't be done, but it's something that you need to be very aware of and honest about and cognizant of when you build that into your business model. All right, good comment from Nancy as well. I'm going to move on to talking about customer discovery, because we need to finish up here. I've got some slides in here that I'm just going to skip that are some other case studies for customer discovery. So I'm going to jump over that and just kind of reset in the final few minutes here on what we're doing. We have this paradigm, we have this framework for thinking about what we're doing as being in search mode. We're way over on the left side of the screen here, working on customer discovery before we get into thinking about how we're going to execute. We're not worried about building our company right now for the purposes of this academic exercise. We want to be in search mode. I'm going to skip this DeWalt case study. It's a good one, but for another time. I touched on this earlier, and it's really important. We all have confirmation bias, and it's a phenomenon that has been very well researched. I've actually done a lot of reading myself on this because I find it so interesting. But it's interestingly and ironically, the older we get, the more susceptible we are to this. We all have a tendency to overvalue data that supports a pre-existing belief that we have. So we all think certain things about ourselves, about the world, about the way things are in our environment. And we go out and we look for signals that will confirm what we already think. And there's many, many, many examples of it, and we could spend an entire class just talking about it. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to unpack it in great detail here. But we're all susceptible to it. I certainly am. You have a political belief. You have a belief about anything in the business world, in your personal life, and you look for signals to support what you already think, and not for signals that would disprove what you already think. So for a long time, we used to think that as we grow up, we're rational and we're objective, and that our opinions are the result of years and years of rational and objective thought. And what we now know is that it's actually in many ways the opposite. Our opinions have been developed over many years from paying attention to what we want to confirm and ignoring things that will challenge us. And if you're aware of this phenomenon, if you study it and read about it, you actually will become much better at this. You will realize that you do it, and you can make a lot of progress on it. But the first step is to realize this is a phenomenon that applies to all people to some degree, some more than others. And we want to step back and consider the fact that some of your assumptions might be wrong, and be open to challenging your preconceived beliefs. That is the fundamental underlying goal of I-Corp. So what we say in I-Corp is people will line up, spend time in line, and spend money to hear a reassuring lie, but they're not going to go out of their way to hear an inconvenient truth. And I want you all to get into the ring with Mike Tyson and get punched and get those inconvenient truths now while you can. rather than doing it later when you've made more promises to your co-founders, your investors, your teammates, your employees, and your customers. So I'm not going to, this falls back on some case studies that I skipped over earlier, but there's been a lot of research about this. The opposite of a confirmation bias is falsification. And there's a lot of evidence that if you get into the mindset of trying to falsify your beliefs, you will succeed in learning a lot more than if your goal is to go out and confirm or validate what your hypotheses are. So I glossed over it a little bit, but the bottom line is we want to think objectively and reasonably about what our hypotheses are and try to learn from them, learn from those hypotheses and testing them in a way that could be replicated by somebody else, in a way that is not prone to your own interpretation bias. So we do that by having this laboratory notebook of a business model canvas, very specifically this canvas on the right, which understands very simply just customer pains and gains. I've got some resources I can share about this. We put that person who you think it is, that bus driver or that CEO or that official, that real estate developer in the middle of this canvas. We think about what jobs are they doing now? What pains do they have? We develop a hypothesis about those jobs, develop a hypothesis about those pains. We write them down. This is just a real simple, quick review. We think about what those trade-offs and balance are to come up with very specific hypotheses, and now we're going to go out and test them. And I'm going to tell you a little bit, just give you some tips about customer discovery. Patrick, exactly, yes. Nancy, will the presentation notes offer any resources on confirmation bias? A little bit, yeah. There's some of those things I'll share with you, touch on that a little bit. Okay, so I want you to think about approaching these interviews that I'm asking you to do as a researcher. So you're not out there selling, and I have selling in quotes because you could literally be selling, like saying, hey, look, this thing that I have, this app or this service or this product, will you buy it? But also literally selling conceptually, more theoretically, as far as just pitching your idea, talking about what you've done, what your ideas are. I want you to rather think about going into these interviews with a focus just on listening, not talking as much as hearing them talk about their jobs, their responsibilities, and their problems. As best as you can, bring a teammate or a co-founder to these interviews so that you can have somebody else listening, taking notes, sharing thoughts on what you might have heard. You'll be surprised how two people in the same conversation will hear different things or interpret it different ways. So bring somebody with you to challenge you. And again, to help keep you on script, to keep you on message, and be writing things down so that you can be locked in and really listening. And be organized about it. Be persistent about getting interviews, be creative about how you get them, and be very thorough about how you go out and do your outreach, organize yourself, set up the meetings, conduct them, and follow up on them. So I would like you all to start by just doing research on people. Start with a list. Could be a spreadsheet like this, an Excel sheet, a Google Doc, a Google Sheet. Could be a written down piece of paper. But write down, this is just an example of the kind of things that you might write down. But just, you know, if you have a profile, nonprofit CEOs or HR directors of nonprofits of these certain criteria. Come up with some names, email address, what company do they work for? What segment are they in? What's their job title? Do you think they're an end user? I'm looking at column F here. Are they an end user or a decision maker? Can we use multiple customer base? Meaning, can you explore multiple customer segments? You can do what you want, but I would encourage you, because we know that humans are not very good at multitasking, of coming up with one specific hypothesis, test it, either validate it or invalidate it, and move on. You could try to do two at once. I'd rather see you do them in serial than in parallel. Just because of my experience, I see that when people try to do multiple things at once, they don't gather enough data. You're only doing 5 interviews a week. If you do 3 in one segment and 2 in the other, it's not really enough to see a pattern. 5, you might start to see a pattern. So I would encourage you to maintain focus. But of course, it's up to you. How do you research customers? I would encourage you to go on LinkedIn. I would think that transit agency CEOs, consultants, and leaders of nonprofits and so on will likely have LinkedIn profiles. They might not. Google them. Look in your own contacts. Look in the contacts of other people in this cohort, mentors, people you met through this program. Just start with your own personal network and the people right around you. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to make introductions to anybody I know. Look on social media. There may well be social media groups around people with common interests around the problems that you're trying to solve. There might be some specific publications or blogs, trade journals in the space that you're looking for. There might be a trade show. Imagine if all of the transit agency CEOs or leaders in the country come together once a year for for some sort of conference or event or trade show. If so, well worth your time and money to be there. You can talk to all of them at once. So that would be fantastic. There are definitely events for leaders of CEO or CEOs of nonprofits. Find those events. If it costs a couple $100, that's what this kind of funding is best used for. You will learn a ton if you can find them all in one place. And remember that getting referrals from people is the best way to build your network. So starting on this process is very hard. But once you have one interview or meet one person, ask them for referrals. Ask them who else you can talk to. They might make a couple introductions. Those people make a couple more. And before you know it, you've gone from 1 to 16 or 32 people in your network here. So the goal is to ask open-ended questions, not to lead the witness. If you say, wouldn't you benefit from a better solution around telehealth, for example? Wouldn't you like to have a device or a solution for blight, for example? If you have them fill out a survey with specific answers, or you ask them yes/no questions, you don't know what they might have said if you asked it in an open-ended way. So try to develop your interview questions to be open-ended as best as you can, and get them telling you stories about specific things they've done in the past to try to solve the problems that they have. So if you ask them simply, tell me about a time that you tried to do a better job with regards to equity, with regards to education technology or telehealth, whatever it is, put it in their terminology. Tell me about when you tried to solve these problems in the past. You'll get answers that will reveal how much time they spend on something, how they make decisions, what their budget is, and just keep asking them why. Why did you do it that way? How did you hear about that solution? How did you evaluate it? How did it go? Just keep asking follow-up questions and learn as much as you can. Angel, when we're reaching out, should we tell them that we're doing market research for a business that we're starting? Great question. Market research is a bit of a loaded term, as people don't necessarily want to participate in market research studies. So it's okay to say that, but I would maybe leave out the term market research and just say that you have that you're participating in a program that's looking to solve problems in their space, and that you are really eager that they're a leader in the field, and you're really eager to learn from them, and you would just appreciate 10 minutes of their time. Something along those lines. And try different solutions. Maybe you can try saying that you're doing market research and see what they say. So, send out 5 emails in one way and 5 in another, and see what kind of results you get. Ask whatever questions you need to ask to get them talking. I would strongly encourage you to have these on your list of questions. What did I forget to ask? And is there anyone else you think, do you have any referrals for me? Anyone else you think I should meet? It might be in their own organization, or it might be somebody from a past life of theirs, former colleagues, somebody else they know in the industry. When you're done with the interview, type up your notes, because 1, 2, 3 interviews, you can remember all the details, but 5, 10, 15, as the weeks go on, you want to be able to refer to these notes and look for patterns. Put them in something collaborative, Google Doc or something that you can share, with your teammate, with the folks in this program. Draw attention in your notes to what you think was most important, what those, best insights were. After you've done a few, review them. And this is especially important for any mentors who are on the line, program leaders, John, for you. You want to sit down and debrief with the teams and ask them what went well in the interview, what didn't go well. The person you talked to, did you learn that they're actually an end user? Are they an influencer? Are they a decision maker? What did you learn about the role that they have in your business model? What needs did you hear? What needs did you identify in these interviews? Did you gather anything to help you add some quantification, some specificity to your hypotheses? Did you learn that organizations of 10 people actually do things this way, 5 people do things that way, where you can actually add that level of specificity to your hypothesis? And did you confirm or disconfirm anything with your interviews? What revisions can you make when you go out and do this again next time? Because you'll be doing sprints of 5 a week for 13 weeks. Be sure to thank people for their time, follow up on any referrals that they give you, and use that to plan your next steps. I'm going to skip this. And I'm going to ask you to do this on your own. So the goal is to look at that profile. And by the way, this is the end. This is the end of my slides here, which is good because I need to be done in 5 or 10 minutes. Look at that profile of who you think your most important customer is. Think about how you're going to reach them, and come up with a strategy to do that. You might be emailing them, you might be calling them, or you might be walking out on the street, masks on, and going and talking to people face to face, whatever you think is appropriate for your business model and for the audience that you're trying to reach. And then once you have a list of people who you want to reach, develop interview questions that you're going to ask them once you interview them, and reach out, set up appointments, and then conduct the interviews. I would encourage you not to stick strictly to the interview script. The goal is to use that as a guide, but really, most importantly, use these questions to get yourself started, and then just listen to the answers and ask follow-up questions to get them talking about their jobs and their problems. Does anybody know what this means? Any guesses? This is something I talk about all the time in I-Corp. You're going to know it by the end of this course for sure.
I'm assuming get out of something.
Get out of the building. Exactly. Get out of the box. That's a good guess. Get out of the building. That's what we do in I-Corp. And I'm putting an asterisk on it because we're not literally getting out of the building so much these days. It might be more virtual getting out of the building. But get out of what you're doing now and go out and engage with people and learn from the customers directly is what you're going to do now. So this is some of the resources that we use in I-Corp. These 2 video screen grabs are Steve Blank, who's one of the founders of I-Corp and founders of Lean Startup. And he's one of the authors of the book on the top left, The Startup Owner's Manual. A lot of the business model canvas resources that I shared with you are the bottom 2 books, Business Model Generation and Value Proposition Design. Strongly encourage you to pick them up. The one on the bottom right was written by some I-Corp colleagues of mine. It's a free PDF download about how to do customer discovery interviews. So you can look all of these up. The videos on the top middle is Steve Blank doing a bunch of videos on business models. And on the top right, it's a bunch of videos that he did on how to do customer interviews. And I can share the links with you for all of these. They're all free. The books aren't free except for the Talking to Humans. The videos are free. You don't need to pay to access them. So just to recap, course expectations, we're asking you to do 5 interviews every week for the 13 weeks that you're in this program. Come back every week, review them, interpret them, look for patterns, iterate on your hypotheses, go do 5 more. You will be amazed at how much you learn. And I will say the I-Corp programs that I teach, every team does 100 interviews in 7 weeks, 7-week programs. So your program is twice as long, and 100 interviews a week for 7 weeks is 16 interviews a week that almost everybody does in my program. So you're doing 1/3 of the interviews and double the time. Might sound like a lot, but I know it can be done. and I'm really eager to hear what you learn from doing them. Patrick says these books are actually here at ETC. That's great. Save yourself a little money and go read them there. That is it for me. My email address is on the bottom of this slide. You will find that I'm very responsive to email. Happy to meet with any of you separately. So if anybody wants to check in with me, once I get to know people and hear about what they're working on, I just start to get personally invested in it and really eager to hear how it goes. So hopefully I'll have a chance to drop back in on this class later on in the course and hear how things are going and how your business models are evolving. And if you want to just shoot me a note and let me know what you heard or drop in on my calendar, I would welcome it. Love to help you all and hear how things are going. So with that,
Dan, this is wonderful,
screen share.
man. This has been great. This has really been great. Thank you so much for the info. Can I ask you a question before you go? I know you've got just a couple of minutes left, but
I got 5 minutes.
I just wanted to ask you,
yeah.
Dan. 5? Okay, excellent. And I don't want to take up if other members want to ask a question. In terms of the follow-up and keeping how you start versus how you suggestion that there's some kind of documentation after each week, how the process pivots. Is this something that you look at in terms of a journey, or how would you do that kind of follow-up?
It is very much a journey. I don't know exactly what you have planned for the subsequent weeks after this, but to the extent that you can, whether it's individual check-ins with the teams or something that you do in your debriefs, every week if you have time, I would really encourage you to have each team give a really short presentation where they do the following things. They state their hypothesis. This is what I thought. This is how I tested the hypothesis. I went and did these 5 interviews. I interviewed these 5 people. You just list them. This is what I learned from those interviews. And this is what I'm going to do next as a result of that learning. 4 things. What I thought, what I did, what I learned, what I'm going to do next. And they could do that on one slide. You could have teams share a slide and just say, here's the 4 things. What I did, how I tested it, what I learned, what I'm going to do next week as a result of what I learned. And when they come in the next week, they take that bottom line from the previous one, they move it up. They said, I said, this is what I'm going to do.
Yep.
This is what I did. This is how I tested it. I talked to 5 more people. This is what I heard. So I would encourage you to do that. And you can do it whatever format you want. It can be in these, in these Tuesday afternoon meetings or, separate check-ins or whatever.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. Other questions, folks?
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I have a
Before we get
1:15.
going?
Otherwise, I'd stay on longer. But 3 minutes. Any final questions?
None for me right now, but I do plan to reach out to you directly. So thank you so much. This was extremely helpful.
Yeah, my pleasure. Welcome any phone calls down the road. Well,
it looks like this is it, Dan.
I will say,
this is really good.
great. I'm logged onto 3 devices here, so it'll take me a second to extract myself. I'll just say, I knew before I even came here that it was a real privilege to be invited and to be part of this. So I really thank you. I didn't realize it was going to be such a pleasure getting to know everybody, great teams, and really working on really just interesting, worthwhile, impactful ideas and solutions. So really encouraged by what I've heard and eager to hear how things go. And please keep in touch. And if you don't mind, John, invite me back. Down the road, maybe later in the 13 weeks.
I shall.
I'd love to drop in and see how things are going.
Mm-hmm. I shall, absolutely. Guaranteed. Count on it. Thank you so much, Dan.
Okay. Good luck, everybody. I'll be in touch.
Okay. Thank you. All right, folks, stick around.
He logged himself out by accident. Oh.
Can you guys hear me? Trying to add John back in. Sorry about that. I don't see you in the moderation panel, John. Did you share your audio and video again? I'm going to just give it a second. It might take a second for you to load in. I also have a private session set up for the cohort and us, John. So if everybody wants to log back out into the session section and go to the cohort discussion session, then this can be a private conversation from everybody else. If that sounds good, John. Okay, move there.